All right, Kyle. So another head coaching cycle has come to an end, and we have 5 new hirings. DeMeco Ryans going to the Texans, Shane Steichen to the Colts, Frank Reich, he is going to Carolina, Johnathan Gannon just accepted the Arizona Cardinals job, and Sean Payton, the most high-profile hire, goes to the Denver Broncos. Out of these 5 coaches, who do you think's under more pressure in year one?
Year one, I would go with Frank Reich, only because I don't think there's a ton of pressure on the other jobs. The Cardinals are going to be without Kyler Murray for most of, if not all of next season. So it's a bit of a transition year in Arizona. Colts are going to have a first-year quarterback. I don't think they intend to compete right away. Maybe they go worst to first. The Colts one, I don't think there's pressure to go worst to first, though, in Indy. The Sean Payton one, that's a whole nother can of worms we can talk about. And then DeMeco's with the Texans. I don't think there's really any pressure with the Texans, because the Texans have been so atrociously terrible for the last 3 seasons. I'm going to go Reich in Carolina just because Carolina has this owner who wants to compete really badly but doesn't know how to do that. And so they are stuck in this like 5-11 purgatory, as I call it. I believe the last 4 years they've drafted 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th in the NFL draft in various orders. So that's kind of the purgatory they find themselves in. I would go with Frank Reich probably as the coach under the most pressure going into year one, just because like Carolina's already done the whole rebuilding thing. They kind of want a coach who can just turn the corner a little bit. They don't plan to tear this whole thing to the ground. If they did, they would have taken the offer of 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns.
I'm going to agree with you there. I think the David Tepper element to the Frank Reich hire is why Reich is going to be under more pressure. Not only that, coming already off a season where you were just fired, if there was any of these candidates to be one and done, I think it had to be Frank Reich, regardless of what's going on at the quarterback position, because at this time, Sam Darnold is still currently penned as the starter. In the NFC South, too, I think you're under pressure because it's a very winnable division right now in a post-Tom Brady era. Anyone could win the NFC South, so Frank Reich really has nowhere to run. Like, oh, you couldn't beat the Atlanta Falcons, you couldn't beat the Brady-less Bucks, you couldn't beat the Saints with whatever they have at quarterback right now. There's really no excuses for Frank Reich to not get the job done other than the quarterback position, which I would think that is going to be a big priority for them this offseason, whether they're going to choose to look at some of the free agent or trade candidates this offseason, or if they're going to look into the younger quarterback. If you get the younger quarterback in there, though, the question is, does Frank Reich get automatically more leash to try and develop said quarterback? Because the thing about when you bring in a Frank Reich is you are bringing in an offensive guy, and there was some debate last offseason whether or not it was right for the Colts to fire him. I think it was, just because you've already been through 3-4 years of Frank Reich, so I think time had already come. You hadn't really yielded the results you want. Plus, there's a lot of distrust between Jim Irsay and Reich after the Carson Wentz trade. So it seemed like that marriage had already concluded. With Carolina, if they do get a young guy, usually you like to give 2 years with the head coach just to try and make it work. I think most likely they might either just be stuck with Sam Darnold, or it's going to be one of the veteran quarterbacks on the market.
Woo! Mitch Trubisky, baby. Get excited, Carolina. You're going to have Mitch Trubisky starting week 1 next season for you. The guy who got punched by Deontay Johnson and then got benched. That was a story that came out during Super Bowl week. The other part of this that I think adds to what we're talking about is the interim guy was incredibly popular in Steve Wilkes, and I thought he was going to get the full-time job. It seemed like they were heading in a direction where he would get the full-time job. That didn't happen. And so the fact that the guy who was there before you was very well liked adds a little bit of a burden to you as well. I know Mike McDaniel was dealing with some similar stuff when he came into Miami last year, and things seem to be okay. You know, they've righted the ship pretty well. The offense is better. They've changed a lot of the roster, but that is something that they're coming into, where the guy before you, or at least the interim guy before you, was immensely popular in that locker room. And so if it's going to be a situation where you expect most of the same players to come back and make a leap from this past year, if you're bringing in your own players, then it's not really a problem, because you just filter out those old guys and bring in the new ones. But that doesn't really seem to be the direction Carolina is going. So I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, they did trade Christian McCaffrey, so like maybe that opens the door for other trades still, but doesn't seem to be the direction they're going. They're kind of just trying to rebuild the plane in the sky, even though the plane is missing an engine.
Who do you think out of these coaches is most likely to have success in year one?
Okay, let me preface first and foremost that I've said this every year for 5 years, and I will continue to say it. I have literally no idea what makes a good head coaching hire in the NFL. Like Mike McDaniel, I was laughing at that last year because I'm like, he was there playing D option. They went after Sean Payton and Tom Brady. They then pivoted to Jim Harbaugh. They then went for Brian Daboll, and Daboll took the Giants job over theirs. And then they went to Mike McDaniel. And Mike McDaniel looks like he might be one of the best hires of this cycle. So like, I have genuinely no idea. I thought Sean McVay was going to be terrible when he was with the Rams. So I have no idea what makes a good
Nick
coaching
Sirianni,
hire
who would have thought he'd be in a Super Bowl a few years later, right?
2 years. It took 2 years for Sirianni to get to a Super. Like literally, I have no idea, not a single idea what makes a good coach.
Still, let's break it down a little bit. Let's think about who is built for success at this point. So as we mentioned, Johnathan Gannon kind of gets screwed out the gate with his quarterback injured. This year's probably a wash for them anyway. Carolina, like I said, the pathway's there just given the division they're in. If they could get average to above average quarterback play at all this year, they could be in line to win this division. Sean Payton, though, why I think he's more built for success in year one is, again, that defense. I mean, the stat was there all year, right? If they just scored more than 18 points a game, they would have been like 10-1, 9-1 at a certain point in the season. If they could just get any offensive production that they weren't having last year, then this team, I'm not going to predict them to win their division because the Chiefs exist, but I will say that they can be competing for a wild card. There's 3 wild card spots in the NFL at this point in history. Sean Payton, year one, makes the most sense out of all these guys to have success. And I would say, counter to the first question, he's under the least amount of pressure, given that whatever failures they have, they could probably write off to Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Sean Payton is most likely to have success in year one. The one that might be the most, but that might be a flash in the pan situation with Denver, because by circumstance, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I don't even know if Sean Payton can fix this mess in Denver. And I know it's Sean Payton who's like going to be a Hall of Fame coach. And I'm like, I don't really feel like he can fix this mess in 2 or 3 years. And by that point, you know, like, what are we doing there? So the one that has the potential to have big success is the Texans. And that's kind of wild to say, but the way that they have success is the same way the Jets had success this last year, which is drafting the offensive and defensive rookie of the year in the same draft class. So if the Texans with their 2 top 12 picks end up picking the offensive and defensive rookie of the years, I think they have enough to be able to make that thing work. I mean, the game I played with the Texans is like, oh, apparently they play for the Texans now. OJ Howard is apparently a Texan. You know, they've got NFL caliber players on that team. It's just, if they get, I mean, I'm going to say Bryce Young. I know that Bryce Young's not a locked in top 2 pick in the draft or number 1 quarterback, but like, say Bryce Young comes in and wins rookie of the year, and say they pick the guy from Texas A&M at the 12 pick and he wins defensive rookie of the year, then, you know, maybe there's a turning point there for Houston and DeMeco, because the Broncos wanted DeMeco over Sean Payton. So clearly people believe in DeMeco Ryans' coaching ability. And it seems like the Texans got a hire way more qualified than they deserve.
Yeah, my only thing, and again, this is going to be from a 49ers fan, someone who loves DeMeco Ryans, what he's done for the team the last couple seasons. I do worry long-term for him, just in general. If I was firing coaches in the NFL, it'd be very hard for me to hire a defensive coordinator, a defensive head coach. Anytime that offensive coordinator underneath him has success, they're gone. Or if they're not having success, they're gone. And I just hate whenever you have a rookie quarterback, which we're assuming the Texans will have, and you have to constantly keep rotating the offensive coordinator position. So I think that that's problematic for him long term. I mean, we're already starting to see that with Robert Saleh and how long he'll be with the New York Jets. Yeah, they love what he's doing for them defensively, but at a certain point, they want a guy that's going to develop a younger quarterback. That's why the Jets are looking at the veteran quarterback market, so that's not as much of a problem. Short term, DeMeco's safe. He signed that 6-year deal, and even if go into this understanding that 6-year deals kind of are meaningless, he's still going to get paid for 6 years, so it's a good deal for DeMeco either way. I think that he's the type of guy that's going to bring a lot of energy early on. He's the type of guy that, like, his players will rally behind him. We're going to see some tough play from the Texans.